All right. Well, welcome to this episode of East Valley Business, the podcast. I'm your host, Colin Diaz, President and CEO here at the Tempe Chamber. Happy to be joined today by the City of Tempe Mayor Corey Woods. Thank you for joining us.
Absolutely, Colin. Thank you for having me.
All right. So a couple of questions. We've known each other for a couple of years now, but for our audience that may not know you very well, tell us a little bit about Corey Woods prior to your role as mayor.
So I actually grew up in the New York area. I was born in Atlanta, but grew up in the New York area, moved out to Arizona back in 2003 to go to graduate school at Arizona State University.
Yep.
And I have a master's. Yeah, go Devils, absolutely. I've got a master's in educational policy from the Mary Lou Fulton College of Education. And I actually thought originally I would be here for a couple of years, and then I would end up going somewhere else to get a doctorate. But I really fell in love with Tempe. I would say I fell in love with Arizona, and I did, but really it was Tempe. It was just the people, it was the community, and did not see myself getting involved in politics necessarily within the city. But of course, one thing led to another. And in 2008, got elected to the Tempe City Council and served 2 terms until 2016. And took a few years off in between. I actually thought that I was going to be done with politics entirely at the end of that 8-year period. As a matter of fact, I had probably about $15,000 still sitting in a campaign account that I liquidated. I gave all of the money to local nonprofits in the Tempe and Greater Phoenix area because my thought was, why would I hold on to money when there are a lot of nonprofits that could use these resources right now? And so I gave away all the money and was settling into my new life outside of politics, and kind of got the bug to go back in, and was, fortunate that I ran for mayor and got elected mayor in March of 2020 and started my term back in July of 2020. So I'm a little over the 3.5-year mark right now. It's all gone by very quickly, but just very excited to be in the job, very excited to have the opportunity to present myself to the voters for an opportunity for another 4-year term. And it's been a wild ride, but I'm enjoying myself.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. So I guess question along that, you've been in politics for quite a while. You've got a myriad of accomplishments. As mayor of Tempe, what's your proudest moment?
The Hometown for All program, where we created a dedicated revenue stream to support the creation of additional affordable and workforce housing in the city of Tempe, is my proudest accomplishment. It was not done just solely by me. It was a unanimous vote by the city council back in January of 2021. But I just always told people, look, I don't want to be some elected official or mayor up here talking about supporting affordable housing and how important I think it is to our community if there isn't any revenue stream to actually get the job done. And so when that vote took place, that was probably the happiest moment of the entire, now nearly 12 years that I've been a member of the Tempe City Council. There are a lot of other moments, and I'm sure we'll touch on some things as we continue to talk, but that for me was tremendous because housing has always been the number one issue that I've wanted to be involved in since I started on the city council back in July of 2008 at the age of 29. And so excited to have the opportunity as mayor now to amplify that message and trying to make sure that we really preserve the inclusiveness and diversity from a housing standpoint that really our community is known for.
Well, I'm happy to hear that. We've, from a business perspective, finding places that people love to work and be able to stay at and keep Tempe home for so many of our great employees and employers. The closer they can live, obviously, the better. Done a lot of great things in transportation as well. Let's take a step back. A couple months ago, we had our State of the City. That was a great address. Still getting a lot of compliments for your remarks there. I think a lot of people are aware of the work during your tenure as mayor, but some of the things you talked about for the future, whether it be attracting restaurants and businesses, if there was something that you say, I'd like to dive deeper on this or maybe I didn't get to talk about at State of the City, what would that look like?
So the biggest thing that I was excited about during that State of the City was talking about the upcoming bond program that will come forward in November of this year. That's going to put forward $180 million for street improvements in the city of Tempe. I had no idea when I started campaigning for a second term as mayor that the issue that I would hear the most about from our constituents was about the quality of roads. It's just something you hear constantly, whether you're in North Tempe or in South Tempe, you hear it all the time. And so that's where the idea came from, because I found that a lot of my colleagues were hearing the same things when they were out in the community, whether it was knocking on doors or going to community events or game nights or whatever it happened to be. We were hearing that same comment from people of, we love the city of Tempe. We feel like we're going in a very positive direction. But the one thing we think we really need to do a better job on is maintaining and upgrading our streets. And so that bond measure would be $180 million that I mentioned before. And that would really go towards fixing every street within the city of Tempe in the next 4 years. Because the current acceleration plan would fix all the streets by roughly 2035 or 2036. And so that's still 11, 12 years from now. And I can guarantee you, if you actually spend a lot of time talking to residents, they would tell you that an 11 or 12-year time horizon is simply unacceptable to them. It's just way too far off. So my job and the job of the city council is to try to find ways to really accelerate those timelines and ensure that we can get the things done that our residents want, but a lot more quickly. And so I'm excited to be able to present that to the voters this coming November. We are also working on additional bond questions for affordable housing and historic preservation as well. Those are not as fully fleshed out yet, but those will definitely also be on the ballot this coming November. So I'm looking forward to seeing what our residents think about those at the point that they can see the language. And I mean, I haven't seen the language yet. They're still all being worked on internally by our staff. But I'm really excited to be able to provide our residents with the opportunity to accelerate a lot of the key priorities and initiatives that they've talked to me about so much.
Well, I definitely applaud you as well as the rest of the council. I'm a firm proponent of, asked, answered, and as a result. So you guys have gone out, talked to the constituents, both in the business community and in the residential side, heard what their requests are, and are taking swift action to be able to address that. So look forward to seeing what that language looks like and having it on the ballot in November. Obviously, Tempe is an attractive area for a lot of reasons: innovation, the location next to the university, the proximity from the airport, just a lot of, essentially the center of the East Valley. What would you tell a business that's looking at relocating to Tempe? What makes us unique?
There are a couple of things I can think of immediately off the top of my head. I mean, first of all, having Arizona State University, which is the nation's largest public university, most innovative university, nearly 10 years running at this point, that's a key point that I think would really attract a lot of businesses either to relocate here or existing businesses to expand their current operations. And so I think that is a very big differentiator when it comes to what the city of Tempe can offer as opposed to a lot of other communities. And the reason why, of course, is because it's the constant influx of people getting out of school with bachelor's degrees and master's degrees and doctoral degrees, which gives us a real competitive advantage, I feel, when it comes to companies wanting to either relocate or expand their existing operations. I also think that we are really the central point in the valley, even geographically. I mean, we're surrounded by 5 freeways. Where I live in the middle of the downtown, I can get to Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport in 5 minutes. I mean, you don't get any more convenient than that when it comes to the ability to conduct business. There are a couple of times this year, actually not this, well, once this year and once last year. Already this year, I had to fly out to Las Vegas for a day to speak at a conference, and I was able to get to the airport in 5 minutes, of course, with no luggage because I wasn't staying overnight, and flew out and spoke on a panel for a National League of Cities at the CES conference, and then was back by 6 o'clock in the evening, and actually back in my office at 7 p.m. To do an interview with ABC 15. So, but that was only possible because of the close proximity and the ease of getting to and from the airport. And I think that's one of the very great things that our city offers. I mean, we are a central location for not just getting to and from the airport, but getting to and from pretty much everywhere in the entire East Valley. So I think that's also a tremendous advantage for the city of Tempe, and why I would encourage businesses to either relocate here or frankly re-up and stay here and expand what they're currently doing.
I'm glad you mentioned the last piece about re-upping, because cities generally are either really great or moderately so at attracting. What keeps us up at night is the retention side. I'd love to see economic gardening happening, which is taking place in some areas where a mom and pop business turns into 2 locations or double the employees. From that perspective, on the retention side, the city does a great job with their business survey every other year. From what you've seen of this year's report, is there anything that you could speak to that the city can continue to do, or that you'd like to see council do in a way of retaining employees and businesses?
I think the biggest thing from a business standpoint would be the continued partnership with the Tempe Chamber. I mean, we have a great relationship. I mean, you and I work together on a regular basis. We get together for lunch and, talk about, everything from the personal to the professional. And I think that kind of working relationship allows you to provide a very good business climate for small, medium, and large businesses here within our city limits. And so, my perspective is really just the ability to continue the open dialogue and to talk about issues that are relevant and pertinent to both sides, to the city or to the chamber. Because I think between both of us, I think that really I think that really helps to make sure that we always have a finger on the pulse of what's going on in this community.
Absolutely.
And there are a lot of other great partners that we work with at the City of Tempe that provide great insights, from the Downtown Tempe Authority to the Tempe Tourism Office to Local First Arizona.
Yep.
There are a lot of great people doing exceptional work in this community. So I feel like if we all continue to work together and we collaborate and share information, I think the sky's the limit.
Couldn't agree more. So some folks may or may not know Tempe Leadership, Career Ready Tempe. These are some of the programs that we partner on. If you were to look at your crystal ball, the great predictor, if you will, future of Tempe is what? If you had to say one sentence, a few words, what are we looking at coming in the future?
I think the city of Tempe is, I think it's really, I think it's going to continue to get a little bit more urban. I mean, I think that's one of the things that decisions that were made, by previous mayors and previous administrations. But when I see a lot of the development of the downtown, when I see a lot of the development along Apache Boulevard, with the presence of things like light rail and the Mill Avenue modern streetcar, I mean, the fact that we're a hotbed for Class A office, you see the new hotels that have popped up with the Canopy Hotel and the Westin and the Omni, and of course, a lot of our favorites, long-standing hotels like the Tempe Mission Palms and the Buttes and things of that nature. I just think that you are going to see a community that's going to continue to really bring in a diversity of business. I mean, I see really cool stuff all the time. Like living in the downtowns has been very eye-opening for nearly the last 4 years. I still see a lot of the same college students and university faculty and associates who are there. But I also see people that I never saw before, like business people coming in wearing suits and ties, getting in and out of Ubers and Lyfts and Waymos and things of that nature. And I see more families vacationing in the downtown who are clearly coming in just to sort of enjoy all of the hotels and the activities that the city of Tempe has to offer. So I think that's what you're going to continue to see as we go forward. And I'm once again, I'm very excited about it. I think that the thing I've always said about Tempe that I really love is that you have the ability to live in many different, there's an environment for everyone in this community.
Right.
I live right in the middle of downtown, as I've talked about a couple of times, but I also have a couple of city council members who live on horse property in South Tempe.
Yep.
And I think that that's really exciting. I mean, the fact that you can have just within a few miles, a very sort of urban downtown that's rapidly growing and providing a lot of new opportunities and jobs. But at the same time, you have these beautiful neighborhoods where people are riding horses around and are having get-togethers in the park and going door to door to share Christmas cookies and things of that nature. I mean, it's really exciting, and I think that it tells people a lot about our city, and it frankly shows that pretty much whatever you want to have, whatever environment you want to take part in, you can get it right here in a city that's only 40 square miles, and I think that's truly remarkable.
Yeah, I think I've heard multiple people say that it's small town feel, but big city living. And over the last 2 years, I've seen that time and time again. So as folks are paying attention to this podcast, they either today or sometime this week will receive their ballots. Can you speak to what they're going to be voting on and just the importance of them casting their vote?
Sure. I mean, they will be voting. I'm back on the ballot, so the mayor's seat is. We have 3 council seats that are up for election as well. We also have a general plan that's going to be on the ballot this coming March 12th too. So the general plan, just as a little note for people, has to be done by statute every 10 years. And one of the reasons you do it is to make sure that you're not making urban planning decisions based on data that's 10 years old.
Right.
And so every 10 years, you're required to do an update to that plan and put it out to the voters for their ratification. And I think what we've got in front of us is an exceptional plan. I mean, I think that really continues to balance the quality of life in our single-family neighborhoods. I mean, as an example, we're not changing any underlying zoning of single-family neighborhoods anywhere in the city of Tempe. Right. So if you're living in a single-family neighborhood and you enjoy the environment that you bought or are renting in, you can continue to enjoy that. But we're also going to begin to provide additional opportunities for affordable workforce and market rate housing in other sections of our community where we definitely need more housing. It's one of the things that we hear from the generations that are coming up now, people in their 20s, 30s, and even 40s. We're saying, look, we need more of a diversity of housing options. Absolutely. Because it's challenging to buy into the city of Tempe, whether to buy or rent. And, with living in a city that is at the center of the East Valley, living in a place like Maricopa County, which is the fastest growing county in the entire country, we have to make sure that we are providing a diversity of housing options for people to ensure that we can still remain like sort of the heart of the East Valley. And so I think it's an exceptional plan. It's one that I definitely hope people will go out and actively support. Yep. But those are all the things that are going to be on the agenda coming up. So,
well, thank you for sharing that. And I'll add a point for those that don't know about the general plan, because if you've not been involved in this process before, it comes up every 10 years. It may look like, change this typo, change this line to that, but this is a long process that involves a myriad of stakeholders, about a year process. I think there was 15 or so tactical advisory committees that covered everything from roads and streets to business to parks to a lot of different elements. So the what's going to be in front of you as a voter is something that was vetted through a multitude of stakeholders and had a lot of feedback. So
yeah, and to that point, I appreciate you saying that, Colin, because the first thing that happened when we started going down the road for this plan was I appointed a community working group.
Yep.
The council didn't even see the plan until August of 2023 for an open to public hearing process. But before that, it was a group of residents that was sitting with our planning staff and really spending time developing a plan that would reflect what was best for our entire community. You had people from north, south, east, and west in Tempe on that committee. We had 40 public meetings over a 2-year period. So, it was an extensive outreach effort to really make sure that we were going into every corner of our community and getting resident feedback and input. And a tremendous amount of that input, of course, is incorporated into that plan. There was the community working group that was first tasked with doing this. They put a tremendous amount of effort in. It then went to the Development Review Commission, which is another group of residents who looked at the plan and made some additional recommendations and changes, then sent the final plan to the city council. And then we made additional changes based on what residents told us they were looking for. And so we feel like what we've got in front of us is a plan that really does accurately reflect the wishes of the diversity of our residents. And we have almost 200,000 people in the city of Tempe, and a lot of them want vastly different things. Yep. And it doesn't mean that everyone's going to get everything that they want. But the fact of the matter is, as long as we all get 70 or 80% of what we want, that's probably a plan that's moving the community in the right direction. When it comes to housing, when it comes to climate change and sustainability, or transportation and pedestrian options, and all of these different things are incorporated in this document. And so I think it's a really good reflection of where our community wants to go and where I personally think it should be going moving forward.
I appreciate that. Coming up on time, but I want to give you an opportunity to speak to something maybe you haven't yet. And, I appreciate, and worth stating, I appreciate the partnership you've had with not just the chamber and myself and my onboarding, but with the business community as a whole. And the spotlight you brought on our region nationally, but also the city of Tempe here in the Valley is something that's greatly appreciated. Look forward to that for years to come. But any parting thoughts for our listeners?
The thing that I really appreciate about the opportunity to be here today, and something I've talked to you about before, is the ability to have these kinds of conversations in a sort of a civil dialogue sense. That's one of the things that I worry about sometimes is missing in our politics today. Not in Tempe necessarily, but across the country.
Yep.
It's becoming increasingly difficult to have conversations about politics and about public policy without people calling each other names and screaming and wanting to throw stuff at one another. And so I appreciate the opportunity to have a forum where we can actually talk about things that are important to the future of this community and talk about them in a way where we all understand. Like no one's trying to destroy the community. No one's trying to do harm to the place that we know and love. We all sort of, generally speaking, I think for the most part, want to get to similar places, but it's all about just the way that we want to do it. So the methods may be different or the ideas may be different, but I think the one thing that we all know is that we all love the city of Tempe and we want to see it do well moving forward. And so, but I think we have to, like this podcast is doing, I think have to create opportunities for people to have civil dialogue where they're not name calling and screaming at one another on social media or screaming at people at council meetings. I mean, none of that stuff is helpful. It's all just frankly noise, and it's sort of childish and just unproductive. And I wasn't raised that way. I was raised by my parents that I was allowed to have any opinion I wanted to have as long as I had the data and the facts to back up what I was saying. But they taught me how to say things in a way that was civil. And I mean, I think their whole point to me as a young person was, if you actually have facts to back up what you're saying, you don't have to lose your temper or yell at anyone because you have the facts to back it up. So that's kind of how those were some of my formative years getting interested in the world of politics and public policy, was sitting around the dinner table with my parents and with my brother. And so it's just something that I would encourage everyone to do, screaming and yelling at people on Facebook or X or Instagram or Nextdoor or whatever it happens to be, or, calling people names or taunting your neighbor or whatever else is. It's immature, childish behavior that none of us should frankly be engaging in. We should have the ability as adults and as residents of the city to have conversations about issues that are important to the future of our city, but to do so in a way that frankly comports with the values of this community without a whole bunch of extra nonsense. And so that's something that I try to embody in this job. And it's why you see me treat people even sometimes who might even be disrespectful to me with nothing but the utmost respect. I recognize, my position is to set a better example for the kind of dialogue we should be having in the city. And frankly, I try to do that every day. And I, really would like to make sure that all of us who live in this community do that as well.
I don't think I could have said it any better. Our goal always is to engage, educate, and understand. And there are times I've told every elected official I've ever met, if we have a relationship, that we won't always see eye to eye, but it's my responsibility and my role, particularly my role now, to share the business perspective. And if that's something that we agree on, great. If it isn't, you'll have a better understanding of why we're coming from that. And I would hope that the same exchange happens the other way. So appreciate that.
One other quick thing about that too is that, to that point, I mean, I have been, I've had a relationship with the Tempe Chamber of Commerce since I first ran for office back in 2006. But I mean, we have not always agreed on every issue. I want people to know, for folks who are watching this podcast, that as long as I've been in public office in the city of Tempe, there's been many issues which I've agreed with the chamber on, and I think probably more so than not. But there have absolutely been times where I've been talking to someone and I'm on one side of the issue, but the chamber's been on the other side.
Right.
But the benefit, but what I found a lot of the value of the relationship to be is, just because we aren't in agreement on a single given issue at one time, there's no reason to blow up the relationship and just sort of set fire to the bridge and say, well, because we don't agree on this, let's just throw away a 10 or 11 year relationship. You simply just say, look, I know that we're not going to agree on this given issue. But at the end of the day, I still value the overall relationship and the ability to, talk with an organization that represents the business community in the city of Tempe. And I just think it's sort of a lesson, I think, for everyone, is that you're not ever going to agree with anyone, whether it's an organization or your family or your friends or your neighbors, 100% of the time. People don't agree with their spouses or their children 100% of the time.
And if you do, you might want to check again. There's somebody's lying.
Someone is not telling you the truth.
Right.
So from my perspective, but the thing I really have valued about, Colin, of course, the relationship that you and I have, the relationship that I've had with the Tempe Chamber for so many years, is even in those areas of disagreement, there's always sort of the understanding that there's a more common North Star, which is we're all just simply trying to make the community a better place. And even if sometimes there might be some policy differences on certain given issues, there's no reason to destroy a relationship that I think has been very beneficial for this community. And so, I appreciate the work that you're doing and the folks who here who work for the chamber are doing, and all, the folks from your board that have also very much embodied that spirit. And I think that's why the relationship has been so productive and so fruitful for so many years.
Couldn't agree more. I think that's a great place to wrap today. Thank you, Mayor Woods. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for the relationship that we have here at the chamber. And I'm going to thank you in advance for the future of Tempe. I love the direction that we're heading. The future's going to be bright. And I've said this. I said it at the State of the City. I'm going to say it again. Hopefully you don't get upset, but I'm on the other side of the mic, so we'll leave it as is. I'm available anytime, but the mayor is also very, very, very accessible, probably too much so, but very accessible. I would say reach out if you've got questions, feedback. That's part of what's going to help us grow in a direction that makes sense for everybody. So thank you for joining this episode of East Valley Business, the podcast. Look forward to seeing you next time.